A government can order a price to stay below or above a market level, but that order does not erase scarcity. Price controls change the rules of exchange. They can protect some people in the short run while creating new pressures somewhere else. A price ceiling sets a maximum price. Rent control is a familiar example. A price floor sets a minimum price, such as a minimum wage or a guaranteed agricultural price. Both policies interfere with the price that buyers and sellers might otherwise negotiate. The shortage created by a ceiling can make the surface story look simpler than the real situation. A price ceiling feels helpful when people cannot afford an essential good. If rent rises too fast, limiting rent can keep existing tenants in their homes. The benefit is real for the people who receive protection. The surplus created by a floor is often the detail that separates a quick reaction from a wiser response. The pressure appears when the controlled price is below the level where supply and demand meet. More people want the good at the lower price, but suppliers may offer less. The result can be shortage, waiting lists, lower quality, or hidden fees. Rent control trade-offs shapes what should be checked next. Rent control shows the trade-off clearly. A tenant in a controlled apartment may gain stability. A new renter may find fewer available units. A landlord may delay repairs if the allowed rent no longer covers rising costs. Minimum wage effects turns the idea into something practical rather than only theoretical. A price floor works in the opposite direction. If the minimum price is set above the market level, sellers want to supply more while buyers want less. That can create surpluses or fewer transactions. Hidden costs deserves attention before the choice becomes harder to reverse. Minimum wage debates often involve this logic. A higher wage floor can raise income for workers who keep their jobs. It can also change hiring plans, hours, automation decisions, and prices for customers. Black markets can quietly move the cost from the present moment into the future. Price controls can shift costs instead of removing them. If a medicine price is capped, patients may pay less at the counter, but shortages, reduced distribution, or lower future investment may appear depending on the market. Quality reductions helps explain why the obvious answer may not be the best answer. The details matter. A temporary emergency cap on bottled water after a disaster is different from a permanent cap on housing, fuel, or food. Duration, enforcement, supply conditions, and substitutes change the outcome. Emergency caps gives the situation its real-world weight. Black markets can appear when the official price is far from reality. If people cannot buy legally at the controlled price, some may pay extra through informal channels. The official rule remains, but the real cost moves into risk and access. Supplier signals is worth checking when the first explanation feels too neat. Quality can also change. A seller who cannot raise price may reduce service, portion size, maintenance, or availability. The buyer still sees the controlled price, but the full experience becomes different. Who benefits first can decide whether the problem stays small or grows into a pattern. Supporters often focus on fairness and urgency. If prices rise during a crisis, people may feel exploited. A price control can signal that society will not allow essential goods to become unreachable overnight. Who pays later keeps the analysis tied to behavior, money, timing, risk, or trust. Critics focus on signals and supply. A high price tells producers that more supply is valuable. If the signal is blocked, suppliers may not respond as quickly. That can make the shortage last longer. Policy duration belongs in the decision because it changes what action would help. A better analysis asks who benefits first and who pays later. Existing tenants, current workers, or present buyers may gain. Future renters, small employers, taxpayers, or people waiting in line may carry part of the cost. Supply support becomes more reliable when it appears more than once. Some policies combine controls with supply support. Rent limits paired with new housing construction are different from rent limits alone. A wage floor paired with tax credits or training can produce different effects than a wage floor by itself. Official price versus real access should be checked before accepting the most comfortable explanation. The common mistake is treating price controls as purely good or purely bad. They are tools with side effects. The question is not only whether the goal is fair, but whether the design handles the shortage, surplus, or quality change it may create. Business planning needs to be connected with the actual consequence. For households, the lesson is to look beyond the official price. If a controlled price creates long waits, fewer choices, or extra conditions, the real cost may still be high. Waiting lists keeps the topic grounded in daily life. For businesses, price controls change planning. A firm may need to manage margins, staffing, inventory, and compliance differently. The legal price becomes only one part of the decision. Future supply can be found in behavior, documents, timing, or repeated choices. Price controls matter because prices are not just numbers. They coordinate behavior. When policy changes the number, it also changes incentives for buyers, sellers, investors, workers, and future suppliers. Fairness and incentives makes the issue easier to name in plain words. The useful conclusion is that price controls can provide relief, but they rarely remove the underlying tension. A good policy must answer the hard follow-up question. After the price is controlled, how will supply, quality, access, and fairness be protected? A price control works differently when supply can respond quickly. If taxi fares are capped for one night, some drivers may simply choose not to work. If rent is capped for years, builders may change what they build and landlords may change how much they maintain. The rule may look simple, but the reaction depends on the market. Another way to see the issue is to follow what happens after the rule is announced. Buyers do not only see a lower price, they also face availability, waiting time, quality, and choice. Sellers do not only see a legal limit, they see whether producing, repairing, stocking, or renting still makes financial sense. If those reactions are ignored, the policy can look successful in the first week and disappointing months later. The main question is not only whether the controlled price feels fair. It is whether enough sellers will still offer the good at that price. If the answer is no, the lower price may exist on paper while people face queues, empty shelves, weaker service, or informal payments. That is why economists pay attention to shortages and surpluses. A rent ceiling may help a tenant who already has an apartment, while making the search harder for a newcomer. A wage floor may raise pay for some workers while changing hours or hiring for others. The real story is the full chain of reactions, not only the controlled number. Price controls can still be useful in emergencies, especially when people are vulnerable and sellers have unusual power. But the strongest designs usually consider supply too. A temporary cap with extra supply support is different from a permanent rule that freezes prices while shortages keep growing. Price controls are tools with trade-offs. They can protect some people, but they can also move costs into shortages, lower quality, hidden charges, or reduced future supply. A good explanation does not stop at the price on the label. It follows what buyers and sellers do after the rule changes.